Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
Dan Oman here with some exciting news. DRF Formulator, the gold standard in past performance information, is now free, exclusively on DRF Bets. Join DRF Bets with the promo code WINNING. Get a $250 first deposit match bonus, a $10 free bet, and free Formulator already uploaded to your account. Access Formulator's premium features, including sortable trainer stats, race replays, personalized trip notes, and lots more. Free Formulator, exclusively on DRF Bets.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Unfiltered on Past the Wire TV with myself, John Stettin, with my co-host, Michael Wilson of Forza Bloodstock. It's Kentucky Derby week. It's Tuesday. The draw was yesterday. The past performances are out. Everybody is studying hard. People are already talking about who they like, who they don't like. Ticket structure, which is bizarre because the weather report's been changing daily. So who knows what weather we're going to have come Saturday. But it's that time. So we got to do Derby, and we've got Michael Wilson, who was an assistant trainer to Bob Baffert, who I've heard knows a little bit about winning the Kentucky Derby. Richard Mandella, who I hear is one of the best in the game. Godolphin Flying Start program graduate. I mean, he's got a resume, other trainers as well he's worked with, been around good horses. So today what we're going to do, Mike, we're going to stay true to Unfiltered, because you're going to get put on the spot a little bit, because we're going to go down to Derby Field. We're going to find out a trainer's perspective, not a handicap perspective, a trainer's perspective on each horse, on how they're training, on how they look, on where they come from, on any mistakes that trainers may have made along the road here that jump out at you, or on the same token, some moves that you think a trainer made that are good moves that are going to help their chances come Big Dance Day on Saturday. So I think it's an interesting take. I don't know to anybody else that did anything like that or has anything like that out there. So hopefully people will appreciate it. We'll get Michael's take on these horses. We'll run through them in post-position order. I may offer a tidbit of a comment or two, but maybe not. We'll see how it goes. But before that, Michael, welcome. As always, it's your show too. So how are you? And are you excited about the big weekend coming up?
Yeah, no, great to be talking Derby, obviously. I mean, seeing the post positions, going through all the breezes, looking at all these horses and how they're coming in here. It's pretty exciting. I mean, there's obviously some that really stand out. There's some that might be a little off their game. But it looks like there's actually a pretty large group that looks like they're going to fire. So it'll be fun to kind of get into each one and discuss what we're seeing there.
Okay, and let's roll. Let's start on they say dreaded rail. I don't know if that's more of an issue prior to the new 20 stall gate or as much afterwards. You can weigh in on that as a trainer, but we'll start with Mo Donegal coming in for Todd Pletcher, second off the layoff on the, again, dreaded rail, and coming out of the Wood Memorial, which they say is not a Derby producing prep race. So what are your takes on Todd and Mo Donegal and how he's coming in?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've watched Mo Donegal's works. Obviously, the Wood was a very impressive win for him. I think he's definitely a horse that has enough talent to be in the mix. I would not peg him as Todd's best horse in the race, probably the most experienced. But to me, I think his last work was a really solid work. The horse looks like he's heading in the right direction. His numbers fit on paper. I've been involved seeing a horse that with Bob that came off the rail, which was Looking at Lucky, and he kind of got screwed. But I think when you have this new starting gate, it's not as big of an issue being on the rail, but obviously you got to make sure you break and find position. So there still is that component to it. You can't necessarily either have to go or you have to take back and figure out where you want to be in the pack. So for Mo Donegal, looking at his work, he definitely looks like he's still on form, doesn't look like he's falling off. You know, he'll probably have to reproduce that form or step it up just a little bit. The Wood, and I think potentially the reason why the Wood is not necessarily, if you're looking at it from a trainer's perspective, the best prep for the Derby is the Aqueduct track actually has a lot of bounce to it. It's pretty easy to get over. So fitness wise, coming from the Wood into the Derby, a lot of these horses, you tend to see the California horses fire because that track is a little bit tiring in California. So they're a little bit fitter when they ship out. Same thing with the Florida Derby, it's sandier. So Aqueduct.
See that I gotta say, that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. Exactly what you just said. So keep going. That's what I'm looking to extract from you, that kind of information.
Yeah, so I mean, the Wood historically has not been the greatest prep. And I think maybe you could point to the fact that usually it turns into a light race with not too many great horses in it. And then the fact that it's an easier track to get over. I mean, let's be honest. Todd shipped this horse up from Palmettos or Gulfstream. I didn't look at where his works were coming from. Palm Beach Downs,
yeah.
So again, he's conditioning on sandier Florida tracks. He's fitter. He goes up to the Wood. He trounces a field that's mainly, you know, not the top in the Derby. And so then the question is, what fitness does he pull out of that race going forward? He's obviously had 2 works at Churchill Downs over the surface, so that's helpful going forward. So kind of how I look at it as he's definitely a contender in the race. I do think there's better horses in this field.
Okay. Happy Jack, the 2 with Rafael Bejarano from Doug O'Neill, who I think you have some experience with, takes blinkers off. The horse has 4 starts. He's had 3 with blinkers, 1 without blinkers. I don't really make any distinction in his form as to how he runs best with or without them. I don't know, but I find it odd to make a blinker change going into the Derby. What's your take on Happy Jack and a blinker change going into a race like the Kentucky Derby?
I mean, Doug's obviously won 2 Derbies. To me, I think he's experimenting a little bit with this horse and hoping to figure out how to get him back to his form in his first start. Obviously, I think his first start's probably one of his best numbers that he's run. Obviously, that was 6 furlongs. When I watched this horse work the other day, he looked great in terms of the mile breeze. But then that scratches my head. Why are you working him a mile to get him ready for the Derby? And so saying that, okay, you're going blinkers off, you're breezing a mile, you know, a week out. Are you trying to make up on a lack of fitness that you're worried about? Are you trying to hope that a light bulb switches on? I mean, he did the mile fluidly, and 139 is not a great mile. It's not a bad mile. It's an average mile breeze. So when I saw that work, I said, well, how does this horse bounce out of it, right? Obviously, he went from the other thing I don't particularly like with this situation is the horse ran in the Santa Anita Derby, then ships to Keeneland and is training at Keeneland, and now he moves over to Churchill. And so I think acclimating, an acclimation time of horses. Every new surface you put a horse on, they acclimate to that surface. So you'll see with Baffert, Baffert used to ship right on top of the Derby most years. Some years he'd come in early, give him a little bit of time, but usually gets majority of the work done in California, ships in, runs, or maybe ships, breezes once, and runs. You're not dealing with 3 different racetracks from Santa Anita to Keeneland to Churchill. So I think that throws a different variable in. The Keeneland track doesn't quite necessarily mimic Churchill. I think the California track is a better surface to kind of get horses fit on, but obviously Doug saw a reason to do it. So I have a lot of question marks about this horse, A, from a talent level, B, from the changes, going from 3 different tracks, and then C, why do you need to breeze him a mile for the Kentucky Derby? You're at this point, the horse should be ready, and you should be just going for an easy work just to make sure that he's finely tuned going into the race.
Makes sense. Good observations. You know what jumps out at me with him is that the first race that he won, I think looks better on paper than it really is. They went real fast early. He came from off the pace. They didn't go that fast late. He ran by everybody. Nobody in that race really stands out. And that was his only race with Lasix. He's run 4 times, 3 without Lasix, once with Lasix. The race he won was with Lasix. He does not have Lasix on Saturday. From a handicapping standpoint, that's a big concern for me, that he can run his best without Lasix. But interesting take, and I like that you're bringing out. California's had a good history with the Kentucky Derby last dozen years or so. West Coast horses have fared well. And I like the fact that you're bringing out that it's good to get him fit over there, because for years and years and years, and we're going back a ways, California had that reputation of a hard, speed favoring racetrack that carried the speed home and produced very fast times. And you wouldn't kind of equate that to 1.25 mile, 3-year-old success in May, but things change and the track does play different out there now, and it's a lot different than it used to be when it was kind of labeled a speed highway. So,
well, I think off of that too, and you've seen a lot of success with the horses coming out of California for years. And I think the biggest benefit with California is you don't have any weather issues in terms of timing, how you get a horse to the Derby. So it's much easier to figure out how to get him to peak. You'll tend to see horses come out of California trained much harder. You'll see 6 furlong works. You'll see 7/8 works. You'll see, obviously most guys, in your last breeze, you're literally sitting on the horse and asking them to go 5/8 or a half. You're not asking them, but in the prep up to those races, those longer drills in between starts, you'd see it when Baffert preps a horse off a layoff first time running in the Breeders' Cup, or in different races. The amount of California still has a tendency to play a little bit old school in terms of doing longer, stronger works to get horses tightened and have those screws, versus now we're seeing a little bit more on the East Coast. Guys do easy 5/8, 101 and change. It's more of a protecting the horse model versus making sure you have the horse fit to run on Derby Day.
Now, next horse, Steve Asmussen, has yet to win a Kentucky Derby. He's won just about everything else there is out there. No Derby. Probably has as good a chance as he's ever had with Epicenter, who is probably going to be the favorite or second choice, depending on whether they lean late to him or Zandon. And maybe it'll be dependent upon what Mattress Mac decides to do, because he's going to bet a couple of million on one of those 2 horses, I think. Which I find interesting that he's not betting the Run Happy horse, but be that as it may. Epicenter, coming in with a lot of hype, a lot of flash, a lot of ability, a lot of weight on his back from supporters. Joel Rosario, who does know how to win the Kentucky Derby. What's your take, Epicenter?
I didn't love his 6 furlong work. The work before his recent 5/8. I thought he looked a little bit off of his game. and I was kind of saying, okay, maybe he's not what he was in his last start. But then I watched his 5/8 work the other day, and the horse dragged the rider around the racetrack. So maybe it was more of a push to try and get him a little bit tighter, asking him to do that 6 furlong work, and then saying, okay, now we got him where we want him. We flipped the light bulb on, and he's all cylinders ready to fire. So the 5/8 work looked great. To me, on paper, I think he does have to step up a little bit in this start. When I watched his breeze, he's definitely in my top 4 of most impressive horses right now. Again, I think there's one horse in the race that looks a cut above everybody else. But again, that horse is green. So I think that plays a factor. I think Epicenter has a little bit more racing, obviously, experience. The one thing that he's used to doing is he's used to having it his own way all the time. And I don't think he's necessarily going to get that. And his 5/8 work was, if I remember correctly, it was a solo work. I can't remember because I watched so many breezes yesterday, and he looked great in that. No, actually, he had another horse in company with him. Sorry. But when he was asked and he was pushed in the 6 furlong work, he didn't look as comfortable as when he was in command in the 5/8 work. So that might play into it. About another speed horse breathing down his neck and pushing him. Obviously, from the 3 hole, you kind of have to go, and judging by his racing style, that's what he wants to do. So I think you're going to have other horses pressing him, and we'll just see how he responds.
My one thing I'll add on Epicenter is I think of the big contenders, top 4 or 5 horses, I think he took the worst of the draw for what that's worth, drawing the 3 hole down inside. Kind of limits Joel and forces his hand a little bit, in my opinion. Now, in full disclosure, Michael and I did not discuss his take on any of these horses prior to this show. So I'm learning as you're all learning as we go along. But I will say this, I hope you're not a poker player. And I'll tell you why. Because I know who you like based on what you just said. Okay, I know who horse you think is a cut above the rest already. And I'll say it now, and you don't have to answer. We'll get there when we get there, but I believe it's Charge It for Todd Pletcher, but we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there, okay? If I'm right, I'm right, I'm wrong. Won't be the first time. Summer is tomorrow. Comes in from the UAE Derby, okay, in Dubai at Medina. Talk about races that are not known as good Derby preps. That is one that is not known as a good Derby prep, and that's despite Godolphin spending millions, if not billions, on trying to prove that it is a good spot to prep for the Derby. Hasn't worked out that way. Summer is tomorrow is coming off a 2nd place to Crown Prince, the Japanese horse, who also try to prove that you can prep in Meydan, at Meydan in Dubai and win. What's your take on Summer is Tomorrow, who is a odd horse to show up here, in my opinion?
Yeah, I personally think he might have shipped in a little late. I think it's interesting seeing horses, working with different horses that ship back from Dubai and the time frame. Some horses look like they're thriving as soon as they get off the plane and they're flat. I would have liked to see this horse probably ship out right after the race and spend, kind of like Crown Pride did, a significant time at Churchill. Nobody can really put a finger on why these horses bounce coming out of Dubai, but there definitely is. And you see it more and more now. When you run these horses in the Dubai World Cup, you give them a break, and you need to give them enough of a break so they're ready to go by summertime. You can't just take them off the plane and expect to run them back and continue the campaign. They will bounce. So I think his last 2 starts were good. I don't think he's the most impressive physical. I don't think he's the most impressive horse when you watch him breeze. And quite frankly, I know he ran on dirt over there. Let me just look at my notes real quick. But what I wrote when I watched his breeze was he looks like a turf horse. So it might lend okay to the one thing in Dubai is what people don't always realize. Godolphin shelves the better horses during the winter carnival. So Dubai turns into a training ground. They might step in and they might start running at the Dubai World Cup. They might run a couple carnival races, but those horses, the better ones, you didn't see Native Trail run in Dubai. You didn't see,
Right.
they're sitting on their good stuff.
Probius,
So,
the other one, the one that beat him. Right. Didn't
yeah.
run.
So they're sitting on the better horses now with the focus on obviously building stallions. So they have to win those top group races in Europe, and they have to win the top races in the United States. The United States horses now stay here. They don't stay in Dubai anymore. So even Godolphin's gone away from the model of the Dubai Derby going to the Kentucky Derby. They say, look, we'll leave our horse with Brad Cox and, we'll prep here.
Okay, makes sense. Now, Smile Happy, you and I did discuss, but not before this race. We discussed him last year when I know after he won the Kentucky Jockey Club, you were very high on him. And you had asked me, I remember what I thought of him. And I told you I thought he was a little overrated. I didn't think that much of him. He certainly didn't jump out to me at that point as a Derby horse. He's in here now with two races. Two decent races coming back at two different tracks for Ken McPeak. He does look like a serious horse. I may have underestimated him a little bit, but he's definitely not the rage horse that everybody thought he was going to be heading into the Derby after that nice win at Churchill Downs. He's a run happy. What's your take on him now? I know you were high on him last year after that race, as were a lot of people. I mean, people were throwing his name around as, oh, this is a legit thing. He's the real deal. Look out. And I told you then, I'm skeptical. I'm still skeptical.
Yeah, no. And I don't think you have a reason not to be. I think there's more horse in there than what he's shown, but I don't think you're going to see it. I don't think the horse is 100% behind. It looks like he's lacking a little push behind. I noticed it when he warmed up for the Bluegrass. I was actually with a group of friends, and I saw Smile Happy in the paddock, said he looked phenomenal. Saw him warm up and said, he doesn't look great behind. Switched my bet to Zandon and threw him second in the exacta, and they came home 1-2. So I understand that. I think there's a bigger engine there, but I don't think it's running on full horsepower.
Interesting. Okay.
And judging consistent, seeing his most recent works, the horse hasn't improved since the Bluegrass. So, I think I did a lot of chiropractor acupuncture work to make sure these horses were finely tuned at all times. The Derby is not a race you can come in at 85% or 7. You have to be 100% because there is going to be one horse 100% on the day, and you can't come in half cocked. And I just don't think he's fully ready to fire. So that's just my thoughts.
Well, no argument. Messier, interesting situation. You got the whole Bob Baffert to Tim Yakteen thing to consider. I think there's no way to argue that Bob is not the one who developed and put the foundation into the horse. Now, Tim takes him shortly before the Derby, runs him once, heading into Louisville, second start for Tim. Does that play as big a factor as some people think? Is it not really that big a factor? What's your take on Messier and the late trainer change?
I mean, I think Messier, he regressed from the Bob Lewis in his last start. Obviously, I don't think that's Tim. The horse was moved literally 2 weeks before the race, right? Santa Anita Derby. So right. You're still running off of Baffert's training pretty much in that start. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to put a trainer's program into a horse to see significant results. So obviously these horses are now running off of Tim's training. And I know people will probably point and say, oh, well, they're Bob's horses. And, you can look at the staff. They're Bob's grooms and they're Bob's exercise riders on these horses. Right. But Tim is now training them. And it is now at the point where on Derby Day, it will be his training program. So I can say in his last work, Messier looks completely on his game. So if he fell off a little bit in the shuffle going into the Santa Anita Derby, the 6 furlong work he put in at Santa Anita was significant. So this is a horse that I think is going to take a big step forward going into the Kentucky Derby and might be back on the form that we saw in the Bob Lewis.
Interesting. I'll say this about him. I liked him all along. I thought he was a talented horse. I think the Robert Lewis might be the most impressive of all the Derby preps. Even though it looks like there was not a lot behind him, just visually, he really looked like the goods that day. And you know, I always thought Empire Maker was a super racehorse, and probably could have won the Derby had things gone a little differently for him. But you know, I always thought he never really got a chance at being a sire here in the States for whatever reason. They kind of gave up him, you know, pretty quickly. So it's nice to see him with a runner with a shot. And I think it's a real interesting scenario. I kind of feel for Tim a little bit because I feel he's in a little bit of a no-win situation. I mean, you're fortunate enough to get 2 live Derby contenders. And if you win, you're going to have some people saying, well, they were Bob's horses. And if you lose, you're going to have some same people probably saying, oh, well, they couldn't win without Bob. So how does Tim win? You know what I mean?
Well, and I think he's done a great job handling himself in the media. And, you know, I can say that at this point, it's Tim's training. Now, he's fortunate not only to get those horses, but to get Bob's staff and exercise riders.
I think he's got Jimmy Barnes as well.
Potentially. I mean, I haven't looked around. I'll know today because I'm going to Churchill Downs.
That's my understanding. I'm not saying that as a fact, and I'm certainly not reporting it, but that's my understanding is that Jimmy is over there. So how much is changed? I mean, if I was a trainer, which I am not, and I inherited a horse from Bob that was, you know, prepped for the Derby all along, I don't know that I would change a whole lot. You know what I mean? I'm of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And Tim is a former Baffert assistant, so I don't know how much his program differs than Bob's anyway. You know, I don't know, but interesting scenario. And they've got another horse that we'll get to later after we get through this Japanese horse, Crown Pride, who won the race that the other horse won second in Dubai. Lightly raced, 4 starts, 3 wins. You know, 3 of those races were in Japan, and here he is coming by way of Dubai.
I mean, from a personal point of view, I kind of want to root for this horse a little bit. I think the Japanese have, obviously, they've done a phenomenal job in Japan over the years, and they're now experiencing a ton of international success now that they've honed how to prep these horses as they ship them out to run in these bigger races. I mean, we saw it at the Breeders' Cup, and we saw them just trounce everybody at the Dubai World Cup Carnival. So this is a horse that actually, very interestingly, looked fantastic in his second to last work. And I watched it and thought, oh, he's just out for a gallop. And I said, oh gosh, he breezed in 49. So he looks like a horse with a lot of talent. Then they put him in his next work, and they had kind of those half visors on him for kickback, and they pushed him a little bit. Those works were 3 days apart, which kind of makes me scratch my head. It looks like he breezes 3 days apart and then has 5 days gap. So, you know, he breezed on the 16th, breezed on the 19th, breezed on the 24th, breezed on the 27th. By American standards,
odd work pattern for sure.
Yeah, by American standards, that's asking a lot out of the horse. Japanese and as we see in Europe and definitely Australia, they have no problem training horse a little bit harder. And so they change up the days in between those work patterns to keep the horse progressing. So to me, they've been trying to figure out the Triple Crown and how to ship over here. We'll see if it works on this horse, but the horse looked fantastic in his second to last work. He looked good in the 46-2 work. I don't know if it was the visors that changed up how he looked. He didn't look as comfortable. So I'm just a little bit curious there on the last work as to how he's going to look on Derby Day. But second to last work, I would have thought the horse wasn't even working. I mean, it just looked like it was easy.
I thought that it was an interesting choice of rider. They didn't go for an American rider when they obviously could have, and they went for someone who has never ridden this horse before. That said, I'm a huge fan of Lamar. I think he is an excellent rider, world-class rider, and definitely capable of winning a race like this. But I just thought that was an interesting move on their part. I think logically, you have a horse like this, you're coming in, you're not bringing the rider that won the Derby in Dubai. You're not bringing the rider who won the 2 races in Japan on him. And you go to a guy that's not from the States, probably his only mount for the weekend. I just thought that was an interesting move. I don't know what to read into it, but again, I think the guy's an excellent rider, so I find that interesting. We'll see how it plays out. Charge it. That's who you like. That's my gut telling me that, and I can see why. I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. I will offer this before you get started. I interviewed, as you know, Safi Joseph on the show. We had a great conversation about White Abarrio. And I asked him what he took out of the Florida Derby in regard to charging. And I thought his answer was a classic. I like to just put the clip up, and he's like, well, I'll tell you this, when I saw him in the paddock, he scared me. And I thought that said a lot right there. You know what I mean? Because when the trainer tells me that, you know, when I look at a horse and see it's scared, I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? I don't really, you know, I know what I'm looking at, but I don't know what I'm looking at. But trainers do. So I was like, interesting, you know, because I think a lot of Charge It. I think he was really up against it in the Florida Derby and kind of thrown to the wolves. And I think he performed respectively under the circumstances. But am I right? Is that who you like? And is under?
I think he could be a horse that we're looking maybe champion 3-year-old at the end of the year. Talent wise, he still has to prove it, right? In terms of performance. Do I think he's ready for the Kentucky Derby? I don't know. I think he's on a different playing field. So kind of what you said about Safi, I was at the paddock, I'm trying to remember years, in Saratoga, and I texted Dominique and I said, I have no idea who this gray horse of Baffert's is, but this monster called Arrogate looks like the real deal, and I would bet him today in the Travers. And he was just a physically different horse. This horse reminds me a lot of that. He looks like a very big gray colt. He looks extremely green still. In his last work, I think he was in company with Pioneer of Medina. He took one stride to Pioneer of Medina's 1.5. And he just does it so easily and so smoothly, but he looks like a horse that you still have to kind of stranglehold him to keep him, from doing too much. He's still learning what to do. He looks like he might lose focus every now and again. So, it took us, when I worked with Baffert, we had Sensational. And Sensational was a horse that was really tough to work with. And it took us a little while to get him to the point to where we got him, where he won 3 grade 1s as a 3-year-old sprinting. But it took him a while to learn that he didn't have to fight with us all the time, that we could work with it. And this horse, I'm not saying that's how Todd's program is. I'm not saying they're having trouble with him. I'm saying there's a huge engine there. There's a very different caliber of horse. But now comes the finishing touches of how's this horse actually going to perform on the day, because he still has some greenness about him. I think if you get this horse in the clear and he has a clear running path at whoever's on the lead, I think he's dangerous. But, anything can happen in the Derby.
Right. And I get all that. But, okay, so we know he's green. We know he's talented. We can see both of those facts. Okay, those are 2 facts. That's not subjective, in my opinion. Can a green horse win the Kentucky Derby?
I don't know. I don't know. I think, I'm not saying it can't, right? I'm saying, if you get a clean trip and you get out, and Justify was what start was it when he ran in the Derby? His 4th?
4th or 5th, yeah.
4th?
And this year, let me tell you, 4th or 5th, and this year, we've got a lot of lightly raced horses, so it's not as big a disadvantage as it might be in some other years.
Yeah, no, so I think there's a good shot. He's obviously coming in off his 4th start. He ran game against a very good horse in White Abarrio, and I think you're going to see a horse that takes a step forward both physically and mentally.
Okay.
He's bred for the distance. So, I don't think there's any distance limitations with this horse. I don't think there's any ability limitations. It just comes down to, how he performs and how he handles the stress of the day.
Right. Which it's a different experience for a lot of these horses, that being that close to that kind of crowd and hitting that wall of noise, turning for home and all the hoopla. So you know, lightly raced horses without a lot of experience can certainly be affected by that. No.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, or they handle it in stride because they have a lot of class. So I don't know what type of horse he is to be around. He might have a ton of class and just handle things extremely professionally. So
Okay, Tis the Bomb, McPeak's other horse.
so Tis the Bomb, I think, is a turf horse. I've always thought he's a turf horse. He tends to fire on the grass and he tends to fire on the synthetic. In his work with Smile Happy, he looked like he struggled to stay with him. And again, I think Smile Happy is obviously the better of the two. I don't think he's ready to make a huge statement in the Kentucky Derby in terms of Smile Happy, but I think Tis the Bomb needs to go back on the turf. You know.
Okay, I like it.
Hey, John, let's just, can we pause this real quick?
Okay, hang on. Let me just pause.
Can't we just, because we finished this?
Well, we're back on. Okay. We took a quick break. Had a dog issue at the Wilson residence. It's been handled. Moving right along. We just finished up Tis the Bomb. We're going to move to either the favorite or the co-favorite with the Epicenter, Chad Brown's horse, Zandon. Chad has yet to win a Derby. I personally think there's probably a few of them with his name on it. This looks like his best chance yet. What's your take on Zandon heading into the Run for the Roses?
Yeah, I mean, I think this horse is in the mix of probably my top four. I think the horse was impressive in the Lexington.
Bluegrass.
The Bluegrass, sorry. It's in Lexington at Keeneland. My bad. So, yeah. So I think he was impressive in the Bluegrass. And he looks like he's definitely 100% right now. So I think it's the right timing. The horse ran great. The horses continue to progress forward. I think Upstart was actually a horse, and it's great to see him as a sire, having, you know, Kathleen O and then having Zandon in this race. I saw him train with Rick Violet most days at Aqueduct, and I was always impressed by him. So it's nice to see him, you know, kind of replicating probably the ability that he had as a racehorse, as a sire now. So for me, I don't see any concerns with Chad. I think he got a good post position with the horse. He can kind of decide what he wants to do from there. The breezes have all looked fantastic. I don't have anything negative to say, but I agree with you. If Chad's going to win the Derby, and I loved his joke that he made a couple of years ago where he says, you know, Baffert, I was asking Baffert what I should do to win the Kentucky Derby. And Bob said, you know, sneak out there in the middle of the night and put some grass seed on the dirt track. So, which Chad said was a joke. Bob never said that. But I think this is a good shot for him now. And I think he's definitely, probably from an experience standpoint and ability standpoint, the horse everybody should be looking to try and beat.
I tend to agree. I'll say this: I don't profess to be an expert when it comes to watching workouts, but the last workout prior to the Derby that I was impressed as much as I was with Zandon's last workout, I've got to go back to Animal Kingdom, who worked, in my opinion, fantastic prior to the Derby, and he went out and won it. This horse worked, in my opinion, like that. Now, everybody says they're all working good and they're supposed to be and whatnot, but every now and then there's a work that just really stands out. And I'm not as big on works as some other people are, but I think this horse worked in a manner that showed he's really at his best right now. I don't agree on the post. I think, you know, he had a little, you know, trouble out of the gate 2 times. I would have liked to have seen him a little more outside, because right dead smack in the middle of 20, you know, I can just see a converge, you know what I mean? When he drops back, a converge towards the ones trying to, you know, save some ground and the ones trying to get off the rail to stop, and him just getting, you know, winding up between horses. And I'll say something about Flavien Prat. Great rider. No question about it. I've been high on him for a couple of years, long before he became the guy. But a lot of his experience in the U.S. is in California, where there are a lot of smaller fields. Now, you got 20. I mean, he's ridden in the Derby, he won it via DQ, won the finish first win, but it was a win nonetheless. in the record books anyway. But
Yeah.
20 horse field, he's going to have to, not only is Zandon going to have to be on his game, but Flavian is going to have to be on his game too, and he usually is. So I don't say that as a knock. I just say, this ain't a 6 horse, field when you're on a 3 to 5 shot at Santa Anita, and it really doesn't matter what you do. You just hang on, and you're probably going to win. This is going to be a little different. He's going to have to, work for this, but I definitely think he's got the right machine under him to get it done. So we'll see. Pioneer Medina takes blinkers off. Another blinker change. That's 2 we got so far into the Derby. Joe Bravo for Todd Pletcher. Epicenter handled them relatively easy twice in a row. One of Brad's horses handled them. Smile Happy handled them. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think he's, I watched his work, and I'm trying to think, and granted, maybe if you put him next to Mo Donegal, maybe he looks better, but you put him next to who I think is the most talented horse in this race. So he looks pretty ordinary to me.
Okay.
I think he's I think he's a mid-pack horse. I don't see him making much of an effect. Look, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But judging by his races, judging by his breezes, he looks like a horse that belongs in the Derby. But does he belong in contention to win it? In my opinion, no.
Okay. Now we come to the other Tim Yakteen horse, also taken over from Bob Baffert, who's who trained the horse initially to one very impressive maiden win. Taiba, I think one of the more intriguing entrants in the Derby. Got to go back to 1880s to find a horse with 2 starts that won the Run for the Roses. What's your take on Taiba, who was purchased for $1.7 million by Gunrunner, who's off to a, no pun intended, flying start as a stallion?
I think he and Charge It are kind of and Zandon. I mean, Zandon's a very talented horse too. So I think in terms of talent and ability, those 3 would probably be my top. Messier looks like he's back on his game, so he's in that mix. But what's tough to judge about this horse, and I heard it, and I heard, I don't know if it was Brittany Urton or Michelle Yu in the first, when he won the Santa Anita Derby, when they were talking about it before the race, saying, Zandon kept saying that this is his Derby horse. And they said, well, the work tab doesn't merit it, and then the horse goes off and wins the Santa Anita Derby. So from what it sounds like is he's not the best workhorse. And you can tell in his works, he kind of just does what he needs to do. He was hooked up with a workmate last work in California when he went 6 furlongs.
Right. Everybody knocked out work. Everybody.
Yeah. And I mean, he looked great. But again, I mean, there are horses, and it's tough. It's really tough as a trainer when you have a bad workhorse that runs, because you're just trying to say, well, for them, are they doing well? And so you have to judge it. Again, 2 starts, 1 breeze, Derby. I think it's a little much to ask of him right now. I think he's probably looking better when he gets a 3rd start under his belt and gets in the Preakness. And I'm not talking from Charge It needs experience. Taiba needs miles under the belt. And that's the difference. I mean, Charge It ran a great race at 1.125 miles in the Florida Derby, right? And Taiba ran a great race at Santa Anita, but you still need a couple of those long races to be prepped to run top speed at the 1.25 mile distance, in my opinion.
Okay. No argument. I find him a very intriguing horse. I will say this, in addition to Safi, we had Mike Smith on the show, spoke a lot about Taiba, and Mike's not a lack of a better term, a phony guy when you're talking about a horse. I mean, if he's high on a horse and really likes one, it'll come across. And if he's just, riding because, he thinks he's got a shot and he's in the race, he got the call, he'll come across that way too. He's a pretty much straight shooter when it comes to that. And, he was pretty high on Taiba. He likes him and thinks he's got a legit shot for what that's worth. But Simplification. Antonio Sano comes in off an okay race in the Florida Derby, I guess. Won the Fountain of Youth. Had all that trouble in the Holy Bull before that, where he got left in the gate, and then everybody said he was the best horse. He came running for second to White Abarrio. Won the Fountain of Youth. Then on the square, couldn't beat White Abarrio in the Florida Derby. He's one of the more heavily raced horses in here this year with 7 starts. What's your take on Simplification?
I'm trying to form an opinion on him. I looked for his breezes. I tried to find them online. Maybe I don't know where to look. I seem to find everybody else in multiple works. I could not find anything of his. So I personally have no idea how he's coming into this race. Obviously he's got Jose Ortiz, so that bodes really well for him that Jose chose this horse. So obviously he knows something that maybe I and the rest of us don't. But
you want to know what I think he knows? Yeah. I think that he knew early voting wasn't going to run in the Derby, was going to run into Preakness, and Chad told him, I'm not announcing it yet because I'm hedging my bets, but go ahead and take the call on Simplification. That's my gut feeling.
Well, and you're probably
I don't know anything. I'm just saying that's my gut.
Yeah.
Gut feeling.
Well, no, and you're probably right.
I didn't think early voting was going to run, but when he took the call on Simplification, in my mind, I knew early voting wasn't going to run.
Yeah.
Unless he told Antonio when he took the call, and you as a trainer would notice, can you tell a guy, listen, I'll take the call, but if the other horse runs, I'm bailing.
Yeah, you can say that. It's not like you're spinning them at the draw in the Derby. You know a little bit out. So yeah, no, it can definitely.
Would you give a rider a call if he told you that? See, I wouldn't. I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to go to somebody else.
I think part of it is, as a trainer, you sometimes have to set ego aside and say, who can I get who's the best rider? And who can I have for backup? Right. And so if you jump too quick and then Jose Ortiz is available, then you really look bad when you're 3 days before and you fire the jock that you had named to then take. And we see it all the time, right? We see it where, oh, you know what? The horse scratched, so he came available. So now the rider I committed to is off and I'm putting the other guy on. So I think it's a good spot. Obviously now with Jose on the last 2 starts, there's some continuity there. I think, again, there's probably 5-6 better horses in the race than this horse. So unless he's coming in lights out phenomenal, and I don't see him being a major factor.
Okay. 2 things. A Don doesn't get spun and a Don doesn't take second calls, but we'll move on now. Okay. Yeah. Barber Road. I hear buzz about him. I don't know. What's your take on him? John Ortiz is developing quite a good reputation for himself as a young trainer. Deep closer, looks like, had a little more speed when he was sprinting. When they stretched him out, he went from a speedy sprinter or a stalking sprinter to a deep closer routing, which is kind of an odd pattern. But what do you think? Barber Road with Raylu Gutierrez riding, I believe, his first Derby.
So I think personally, I've seen the horse. He looks good on the track. He looks good. He doesn't look phenomenal. He doesn't look excellent. He's a grinder, which could play to his favor. He has not faced much, nor has he beat much. To me, I think Cyberknife's a good horse. And when we get into this, I don't think he's Brad Cox's best horse.
No, he's John. Okay. Cyberknife. I got you.
So, he ran second to Cyberknife. I don't think it's Brad's best horse in the Derby. And then Ethereal Road, obviously he ran third to Ethereal Road. Unojo's out. Ethereal Road is, again, he's in the race. So I see this horse potentially being a factor in picking up the pieces if things fall apart and the good horses don't fire or get in traffic trouble or whatever. This horse seems like he's got the type of personality that's just going to grind and keep running no matter what is going on. So I think that's the only way that he really becomes a factor in here. And maybe if it's an off track, and grinders tend to do well on off tracks. When talented horses flail because they're not used to a surface, a horse is just tough mentally. can beat him out. So those are the scenarios where I see him. He's not in my top 7 or 8.
Okay. White Abarrio, interesting horse, one of 2 race days in here. Okay, Barber Road is by race day. White Abarrio is by race day. It was a private purchase by Safi Joseph, his current connections, La Milagrosa and C2 Racing Stable LLC. Safi, hears that noise all the time that he doesn't win outside of Gulfstream Park as much as he does inside or at Gulfstream Park. And here he is with one of the live horses in the Kentucky Derby, coming off 2 extremely impressive wins. And what jumps out at me, and his race at Churchill where he ran 3rd was a trouble trip. Safi likes that race a lot. I know, he told me so. But what jumps out at me when I look at White Abarrio is he's just got a perfect style of running to kind of make his own trip, and the draw kind of played right into that. He's outside, he could stalk, he could sit a little further back than actually stalking, kind of like 4, 5, 6 lengths back, and maybe stay in the clear and move at the right time under Tyler Gaffalione, who was one of the better young riders in the country, if not the world right now. And he's at that stage in a rider's career that I really like, because he's at that stage where he's damn good, but getting better every day. You know what I mean? Just he's really developing. He's like a quarterback that's just coming into their own and making all the right moves. So what's your take on White Abarrio?
I think you can never count out a fighter. And people might not like to hear this. It might not be the most popular opinion. I don't think Essential Quality was the most talented horse in his group. I think he was the toughest horse in his group. And I think that's why he turned into the horse that he was. And I think this horse is very much the same. I think he's got talent. I think he's got ability. Is he the most talented horse in the field? I don't think so. But I do think that he's the toughest horse in the field. And I do think that he's the type of horse, as you said, that will make his own trip, figure it out. And if it turns into a dogfight, I think this is the type of horse that you can see get in front and stay in front. But I don't say he doesn't have talent. I think he does have talent. I think there's a couple more that might be slightly more talented, but even Michael Jordan said, I was not the most talented player in the NBA. I was just the toughest. There were guys that were more talented than me that didn't have the same work ethic or the same gut to gut it out at the end of a game. I think this horse has that quality combined with his talent makes him a threat.
His last workout wowed Safi Joseph. Okay, it was at Gulfstream Park. Safi likes to ship in late and do all his prep work at his own track, similar to some other trainers we talked about earlier. And that work is available on Past the Wire, our website, pastthewire.com. So you can watch it in its entirety there. You just go to Latest Racing News and you'll find it. It's there within the past couple of days. If you want to watch his work and have trouble finding it anywhere else. So I know. When you're a trainer that wins as a high percentage as Safi does, and then you hear stuff that you can't win away from your home track, you didn't do good in Saratoga, blah blah blah. It's got to be special to show everybody in a race like the Derby. Well, maybe not as much, but I could certainly win the big one. So I got a feeling he's got White Abarrio ready to fire on all cylinders. Brad Cox, Cyberknife. Brad's a Derby winner, kind of. He's like Flavien Prat, Florent Giroux. They didn't finish first, but they're winners. Cyberknife, is he going to be the finished first Kentucky Derby winner for Brad Cox?
So obviously the Arkansas Derby was impressive for him. I thought it was one of the weaker prep races on the Derby Trail. I think kind of everything that kind of happened at Oaklawn this year was weaker of the bunch, besides Secret Oath coming out of there. Looking at it overall, he's a good horse. I don't think he's Brad's best. And I watched his works, and I'll tell you, and we'll get to this horse eventually, I think Zozos is actually Brad's best horse in the race, at least how they're doing right now going into it. I think Cyberknife is going in there really well. I think he probably hasn't regressed. I don't think he's potentially moved forward from that last start. I think he's just a good horse at where he's at, and he'll fire the way he's going to fire.
We're on the same page as far as who's Brad's best shot is. So that's interesting. Classic Causeway. What I want to ask you about Classic Causeway, obviously, is your opinion of him, but he's coming into the Derby off a race where he finished 11th by 21 lengths. Now, as a bettor, I like sometimes betting horses off bad races like that because you get a much better price. And if you can have a legitimate excuse and you know why they threw in a dud, you can sometimes really capitalize on it. I don't like Classic Causeway on Saturday, but I'm curious to your take as a trainer going into a race, off a race like that. Does Lynch know something that we don't, or is he just taking a shot that the horse could bounce back? Give me the scenarios that could justify running off a 21 length drubbing in the Kentucky Derby. I mean, you want to come in off a good race, I would think.
Yeah, and they had a good interview with Brian Lynch the other morning, and Brian said, "Look, it pretty much he wasn't planning on running the horse."
Okay.
And then the horse was training well, and he said, "Well, why not run him?" So I don't think Brian's going in there saying, "I'm going to win this." I think he says, "Look, I've got a great horse that had a terrible performance. The horse is running well, and why not put him in there and see what happens?" I personally felt this horse was overrated most of the winter at Tampa. And I think it might have showed a little bit in the Florida Derby. I think a lot of people are scratching their heads what happened. And even, as you hear Brian talk, he doesn't quite know what happened in the Florida Derby. So the question is, does this horse get back on form? And if he gets back on form, then I think he's in the mix of the top 7 horses, but I don't think I do think there's better horses. I mean, obviously, most of his wins came pretty easily at Tampa, not pushed, and he got pushed in the Florida Derby, and maybe he's not mentally as tough as some of these other horses. That's kind of my thought process there.
Okay. Another Brad Cox horse, Tony Port. Ricardo Santana picks him up off a win into Lexington. The last chance to kind of make the Derby. That's the prep race after the prep races where they got a couple of leftover points for anybody who wants to try and sneak in the back door. And Tony Port did it.
Yeah, I mean, he looked great in the paddock that day. I was there watching him in the Lexington and seeing him in the Lexington. That was one of the exactas I hit on the day, was him and Major General. I think he's a very nice horse for sure. Again, the Lexington, there wasn't a ton in the Lexington, right? You've got him, Major General ran second to him, and In Due Time ran third. All good horses in their own right, not necessarily but Pioneer of the Nile was a very effective horse in the Kentucky Derby. We lost to Mind That Bird, which was a little bittersweet since I had worked with both horses. Mind That Bird, I'd worked with at Mandella's, and then I was working with Pioneer of the Nile at the time at Baffert's. So I don't think you can count out a Pioneer of the Nile. Obviously, they can get the trip. Obviously, he's out of a Macho Uno mare, so you've got plenty of two-turn ability on the pedigree side. For me, he's got to move forward a little bit. And I think his work pattern, he's looking good in his works, and I think he's progressing. I think he's a horse that's going to round into form in another 3 to 4 weeks. Probably make his peak around then. He might not be peaking now.
Got 2 left.
Yeah.
We got Brad Cox's, what we both think is his best shot with Zozos. Manny Franco, he gave that call to. Interesting. Manny doesn't ride a lot for Brad, if at all. What's your take on Zozos?
Yeah, his works were impressive to me. I mean, the fact that he kind of has an action up front that looks like he has wasted action a little bit when he moves. He's not the most fluid mover, but he breezed really well the last 2 works. So he looks like he's on top of his game. I do think he needs to improve a little bit in this race, but he looks like out of the 3 Brad Cox horses, he's the one training the best going into this race. And obviously running second to Epicenter in his last start, only getting beat 2.5 lengths and looking like he's progressed. And knowing what we think of Epicenter in the mix, this horse, to me, being the best of Brad Cox's 3, in my opinion, in terms of how he's doing now, right? How he's doing with what? We're 4 days out, 5 days out. So that's why I personally like him, was his works all looked great.
Okay. Last but certainly not least, and it's just a story in itself, and just a remarkable asterisk on a legendary career. Wayne Lukas, 88 years old, got a horse in the Kentucky Derby. Used to be you couldn't run the Kentucky Derby without Wayne Lukas having a horse in it. Now, at 88, just getting up out of bed is a win. Putting on that suit is a win. Getting on that pony is a win. Having a horse in the Kentucky Derby is a huge win. Ethereal, did I say it right? Ethereal Road. Ethereal Road. There you have it. Okay.
So love it for Wayne. I'm extremely happy to see him in there. Obviously, he's been trying to get this horse qualified and get enough points to get in the starting gate. Glad it worked out. Glad he got in there. To me, I don't want to say that this horse carries too much weight, and consistently carries too much weight. So I don't know if he's just a really good doer and eats really well, or if that's just his frame. But I saw him in the paddock in the Bluegrass, and I said, "Ooh, this horse could lose a couple pounds." And so then I said, okay, well, he ran in the Bluegrass, and now he wheels him right back into Lexington. Maybe he's lost a couple pounds, and still just this thick horse. And when you look at it from a physical perspective, and you can look at it and say, okay, well, Curlin was big. Well, when you look at Curlin was big and balanced. He had a frame to carry all that weight. He was built to carry it. Ethereal Road is built to carry his weight. He's not as big, he's not as robust as Curlin is. He's just a heavier horse. When you think about it in a race, the more weight you carry, the more tired you get. And going 1.25 miles, I think is going to be very taxing on this horse. Can I ever count out Wayne Lukas? No. You just can't. But this horse, to me, I really liked him, was pulling for him after I saw him run second in the Rebel and say, okay, Wayne's got another shot in the Derby and this horse can go in the right direction. And then I saw him in the Bluegrass. I said, gosh, this horse is just a little heavy. And he stayed heavy, and he still looks heavy right now training at Churchill. So maybe it's his physical makeup. Maybe that's how he is. But I do think it affects him, and I do think it affects him at 1.25 miles.
Okay. There we have it. Unfiltered on Past the Wire TV, episode 2, a trainer's take on every horse running in the Kentucky Derby, barring any of the also eligibles getting in. Interesting. I think a lot of great insight. I like everything that we spoke about. I think people get a lot out of this if they listen to it and watch it. I thought it was a really good, fun show to do. I really did. Got a lot of interesting information, even for me, who's been at this for a while. So, okay,
no, it was fun, a lot of fun. So,
and you're off to Churchill Downs today, Tuesday before the Derby.
Tuesday before the Derby, I have to go do some work over there and got to run and be there by 1:15. So
okay, well, without further ado, thank you everybody for tuning in. We will let Michael hit the road so he gets to Louisville on time, and we'll be back with a lot more Kentucky Derby stuff on Past the Wire, pastthewire.com, Past the Wire TV. We got a great seminar if you want to join it on pastthewire.com. Check it out. Great Derby stuff all over the place. So thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
nobody.